now to the lead story tonight. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has landed in India for a 3-day visit. Every which way one looks at it, the visit is significant. From India's perspective, it signals New Delhi's intent to pursue ties with Iran, independent of other countries in the region and beyond, and in spite of competing pulls and pressures. Also, it comes at a time when a proxy war between Israel and Iran is manifesting itself in multiple theatres across West Asia.
More than outcomes, it is the symbolism attached to Rouhani's visit to India that is significant. Here is a president who is persona non grata in some countries, such as the United States and Israel. Israel views a nuclear Iran as an existential threat, and President Donald Trump of the US has threatened to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal and impose more sanctions on Tehran. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has invested a great deal of time and energy in strengthening ties both with the US and Israel, but yet has signaled his intent to engage Iran. In doing so, Mr. Modi has possibly showcased the best of India's foreign policy dexterity, maturity and nimbleness. The visit assumes significance in a regional context too. For one, Israel and Iran have been and are at loggerheads. Their proxy war has manifested itself most recently in Syria after Israel shot down an alleged Iranian drone that entered Israeli airspace, and Syrian forces retaliated by bringing down an Israeli military aircraft. Both Iran and Russia support the government of President Bashar al-Assad of Syria, but Israel fears a so-called Shia arc of influence at its doorstep, extending from Iran via Iraq and Syria all the way to Lebanon. The messaging is clear. India will independently pursue ties with most countries of consequence in the Arab world and the Persian Gulf. In recent months, India has straddled competing narratives or interests in West Asia with finesse, be it the Israel-Palestine conundrum or the Saudi Arabia-Iran rivalry for regional supremacy. If Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel in July last year, he also made it a point to visit Palestine on his most recent West Asia swing. He visited Sunni Saudi Arabia and Shiite Iran in 2016 and travelled to the United Arab Emirates and Qatar too. He has also hosted a number of West Asian leaders in New Delhi. Later this month, King Abdullah of Jordan is expected to visit India. So, is India finally beginning to get its act together insofar as West Asia is concerned? While the jury is out on that one, Prime Minister Modi and his foreign policy team have indicated that his government's neighbourhood first policy is more than just a slogan for them. Ramesh Ramachandran, WION.
Some of the biggest headlines in India vis-à-vis Iran in the recent years have had to do with a port. Chabahar is what it's called, the first phase of which was inaugurated barely 2 months back. No mean feat, given the challenges involved. The question now is, can India insulate its strategic investments in Iran from fluctuations in America's policy towards that country? Ramesh Ramachandran once again with this report.
It's a question worth asking. In the past, India had to restructure oil payments to Iran because of the United States sanctions. Consequently, oil imports took a hit, trade suffered, and with it, India's ties with Iran. Already, one is hearing a heightened rhetoric from Washington. President Donald Trump is reluctant to honor the Iran nuclear deal reached in 2015 among Iran, the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, Germany, and the European Union. India's Transport and Shipping Minister Nitin Gadkari believes that any deterioration in the US-Iran ties will not affect work on the development of Chabahar port. In fact, he remains optimistic that the port will become ready for operations by December this year. India and Iran first agreed to develop Chabahar in 2003, but the US sanctions against Iran delayed the construction of the port. Chabahar is located less than 200 kilometers or 100 nautical miles from Gwadar, a deep-sea port in Pakistan's Balochistan province. It is seen as a counter to Gwadar, which was built with China's assistance. The controversial China-Pakistan Economic Corridor links Gwadar with China's Xinjiang province through a network of roads. Gadkari's Iranian counterpart shared a similar view during his recent visit to India.
So from our side, that certainly we are committed to the GCPOA, and also I'm very optimistic that the other parties are committed to this agreement. As you know, that yesterday that we have announcement from the European ministers of foreign affairs. So although there is some propaganda from US, but however, so far you are saying that the other 5 countries are committed. So I don't think that the US can go alone. So I think US should follow the consensus of the world.
President Hassan Rouhani of Iran inaugurated Phase 1 of the Chabahar port project in December last year. India attaches strategic value in developing the port not only in terms of enhancing connectivity with Afghanistan and beyond, but also to counter the Gwadar port leased by Pakistan to a Chinese company for 40 years. The India-Iran strategic collaboration extends to the development of railway infrastructure and sale and industrial production of locomotives too. An Indian state-owned company, Ircon International, has completed feasibility studies on building a railway line worth $1.2 billion linking Chabahar with Zahedan, which falls on the proposed international north-south transport corridor, and a $60 million deal for sale of 200 locomotives to Iran, which will entail setting up of a manufacturing facility in Iran going forward. Ramesh Ramachandran, WION.
A review of India-Iran relations will be incomplete without looking at the recent history of their ties, filled with ups and downs. In 1994, Iran came to India's rescue by getting the Organization of Islamic Conference, or OIC, a grouping of Islamic countries, to not push for a United Nations resolution against India on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. It came about only after the then Indian Prime Minister Narasimha Rao hurriedly dispatched his foreign minister as his personal emissary to talk to the Iranian leadership. At the turn of the millennium, India sought to revitalize ties with Iran. In 2001, then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee visited that country, and the two leaders, and 2 years later rather, India hosted then Iranian President Mohammad Khatami as a chief guest at its Republic Day celebrations. Both countries held preliminary military talks and discussed about the Chabahar port, among other issues of interest to the two. But by 2005, relations took a hit after India voted against Iran in the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, the United Nations nuclear watchdog. And this was the time, remember, when India was negotiating a civil nuclear cooperation agreement with the US, and American lawmakers leaned on New Delhi to curtail its ties with Tehran. Tehran retaliated by cancelling a contract for selling liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to India. For the next decade, India and Iran, the relations remained lukewarm at best, until circumstances injected a new sense of purpose and urgency into the bilateral relationship. But even when ties were not looking up, diplomats of both countries remained engaged throughout. India reduced but did not cut imports of Iranian crude oil in spite of facing problems in paying for it on account of the United States sanctions against Iran. The road to recovery was not without hiccups, though. Like the time when Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei rigged up the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, much to New Delhi's disappointment. More than trade and economy, it was the logic of connectivity and security interests that was the clincher in this relationship. A hostile neighborhood, China's all-weather relationship with Pakistan, China's foray into the Gwadar deep-sea port overlooking the Arabian Sea, the so-called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and worsening security situation in Afghanistan all weighed on New Delhi's mind as it sought to re-engage with Tehran. The significance of the visit of Rouhani is therefore to be seen in that context. Interestingly, Hyderabad is the city Mr. Rouhani chose as his first stop in India, where he has quite a few engagements, including a visit to the city's famed Makkah Masjid. He will also be interacting with Muslim scholars and intellectuals, apart from members of the Hyderabad Shia community who have been here for more than 400 years.
On his 3-day visit to India, Iranian President Dr. Rouhani is spending nearly 24 hours in Hyderabad city, which is his first stop. Besides visiting historical monuments, Rouhani will interact with a cross-section of people, including religious scholars and the clergy.
Many historical structures like Charminar and Quli Qutub Shahi tombs have strong influence of Iran. perhaps this is the reason why Iranian President Dr. Hassan Rouhani has chosen Hyderabad first over New Delhi.
Cultural ties between Hyderabad and Tehran date back centuries. The Qutb Shahi rulers of Hyderabad were of Iranian descent. Locals say Iranians are very fond of India and Hyderabad in particular.
Hyderabad has got historical connections with Iran, and the rulers who first came here, the Qutb Shahs, they are also from Iran. Basically, they were Shia rulers, but they were very secular rulers. They catered to all needs of all communities, all religions. There's nothing like that. So that is from where this Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb came.
Rouhani will be the first Iranian leader to deliver an address from the Makkah Masjid in the city. He will hold a meeting with Iranian community members before leaving for Delhi on Friday evening. Bureau Report, WION.